Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Nigerian-born, Los Angeles-based jazz vocalist Douyé. We caught up with her in mid-April 2020 to talk about the coronavirus lockdown and the world of no live jazz and her recent CDs that she sent over to Neon Jazz. She is a Lagos, Nigerian-born jazz vocalist. While she was growing up in Nigeria, she was interested in the American music of Billie Holiday, Vaughn, Ray Charles, Ella Fitzgerald, and so many others. And eventually, she started writing poetry that turned into songs that she was singing at the age of 5. Man, she has great stories. Enjoy.
You know, it's Neon Jazz Radio in Kansas City. How are you?
I'm beautiful. Good morning.
Hey, thanks for reaching out and sending the music. I loved it, and I'm really excited to talk to you.
Oh, how excited.
So, how are you holding up? Are you out there in Los Angeles?
Yes, I am. I live in Los Angeles, in a small city called Marina del Rey.
Okay. How's everything going?
Beautiful. The weather, I just woke up maybe 20 minutes ago. The weather's okay. I mean, it's fairly moody this morning, but hopefully it picks up as the day goes by.
Yeah. Well, at this point, it's really day by day, but at least you have all of that sunshine and wonderful weather out there in Southern California, so I'm sure that helps.
It does. It was very beautiful on Saturday, yeah.
Well, again, thank you for taking some time out today to talk with Neon Jazz. And I want to start out and talk about the 2 CDs that you sent over, Quattro Bossa Nova Deluxe and Daddy Said So. It's very evident that you love jazz. It's very evident that you love the craft, the classics in your own interpretation. So talk to me a little bit about what your artistic approach is, not only to the stage, but to these recording projects.
Oh. How do I start? For me, like you said, I grew up listening to jazz. Jazz was the very first kind of music that was introduced to me, and it was introduced to me by my dad. And so I, sat for many hours listening with him, both instrumental jazz and, of course, vocal jazz. And this is when I was just a very young kid. I want to say from 4 or 5 years old. And I just took on the entire feeling of the sound called jazz growing up. And of course, he told me, that he wanted me to do jazz when I become an adult. And, I pushed it away. I honestly did, because I thought maybe I wasn't good enough. I don't know. Maybe I can handle it. I was just a little hesitant. So I went on to do like classic R&B kind of music. But somewhere down the line, I was pulled back to do this thing called jazz. So I really love the music. I really do. In terms of my styling, I just completely surrender myself to the sound. I completely surrender myself to giving it my best, and being as pure as I can be in my recordings, even in my performances. I just completely surrender myself up in the stage and say, I'm here to perform and just give my best. I don't like gimmicks, so and so when I do those things, I just it's not about me at all. It's really about the music, I respect the people that come to visit when they come to, watch me perform and all that. And so I just completely, surrender myself. I don't know how else to say it. So.
No, that's great. So let me ask you this: what jazz artists were you listening to early on in your life that really inspired you?
Four of them that I really like, and I still listen to them every day. And they are Frank Sinatra, Ella, Fitzgerald, Sarah Vaughn, and Billie Holiday. That's it. I listen to them for different reasons, but those are the only four.
Right on. So, you talk to me a little bit about growing up and your childhood. I know you were Nigerian-born and you came to Los Angeles. Give me an idea of your timeline and how these places influenced who you are.
Oh, well, like you said, I'm a Nigerian, but, right from childhood, I've always traveled abroad with my dad. And when we travel, of course, we always, you always get some jazz music and all that. So we go back home and we'll listen. I came from a very, how do I say this? My dad was a professional, how do I say this? He worked for the government of Nigeria, and more like I don't want to say traditional African Nigerian home, but he was Western in his ways, but he also made sure that I understood the culture, the Nigerian culture. I mean, I had to do that, because my entire family, they always do certain things that has to reflect the culture, like the food, the clothing, and the way we address people. I don't know how else to say it. But, I came from a very beautiful family. My dad was a very beautiful person. And he made sure I understood where I am from in terms of the culture. But he also took me traveling many times, every year actually, for me to understand the Western world culture. So, I guess, I am the product of all of that.
Right on. Well, you said that he kind of was pushing you into music and jazz, and, you kind of resisted. If you weren't a singer, what was it that you wanted to do with your life?
Probably being a lawyer. My mom is a lawyer. Okay.
So talk to me about the beginnings of your career. Like, how did it begin, growing pains, and just how comfortable you feel on stage?
I am very comfortable. Very, very comfortable on stage. I mean, that's one place that I am most comfortable. I just completely surrender myself when I go up on the stage. And, what can I tell you? I started off, I went to a school called Musician Institute. I went there and studied voice. And so we were always put in a position to perform every day when I was at that school, because that was part of the curriculum. After that, I graduated. I started writing songs with people, and I decided to just do R&B. But like I said, somewhere down the line, I decided no, I have to do jazz, because I promised my dad that I was going to do jazz, even though I was hesitant, coming up. And so, at some point, almost like the spirit came to me and said, you have to go in and do jazz. And I was still hesitant, even though I thought jazz is very influential in America. I still felt it was not like a big market, and I was like, I don't know if they will even accept me and all. But, you know, I took courage and decided to go and do it.
On the album dedicated to your father, Daddy Said So, you feature Ron Carter, Russ Malone, Kenny Barron, John Beasley, John Clayton. Talk to me a little bit about that recording and, you know, the artists and just kind of, there's a lot going on there.
When I was young, my dad really liked Ron Carter and Kenny Barron. He liked their work. And so he had taught many people that, you know, when you become a woman and you go up in the West and you start doing this music, you know, if you have a chance, try and work with this gentleman. And we just talked about it and, you know, not put too much effort in it. But when I finally decided to really do jazz, I thought about that, you know, because it was a dream for me. Of course, so I did demos and reached out to them. I didn't know them from nowhere. I just knew them, you know, publicly like everyone else. And I reached out to their people and sent my demo to them. And they listened and reached out to me and said, yes, they want to work with me. That they thought I have a unique sound, you know, and my sound was very true. They both said that, you know, in similar ways. So that's how we started. And I flew down to New York and met with them, and I recorded with them at separate times. And of course, you know, the other people in the that are featured in the album, like Russell Malone, a very beautiful guitarist. John Beasley lives right here in Los Angeles with me. He's a friend already, so I started off with him. I told him my plans on doing this album, and he thought about it and listened to my ideas, and he liked it, and that's how we, you know, dashed off with that, put the band together and recorded 2 songs with him. So that album is very special. You know, I didn't want to come out as mediocre. I wanted to come out for the jazz world to see that this is something that I really love to do and blessed with, and they should take me seriously. And I'm very glad that all those gentlemen, you know, were open to work with me.
So tell me, what was the first live jazz show you saw that made you think, man, this is what I want to do with my life?
Oh, let me think if I can even remember. It was in England. It was Miriam Makeba. She's actually an African. I'm pretty sure you know of her. I went there with my dad and we watched her, and of course I also saw her in South Africa when she performed. I just liked it, you know. She was filled with energy. She was strong on stage, and she belted it out, you know. And I just liked it, and I said, wow, you know, the crowd was crazy for her and all that. And I really enjoyed it. And I said, well, I mean, it's possible. That was all I said. It's possible that I'll do this.
Right on. So tell me a little bit, what's your favorite thing about being a musician?
Being able to perform. Because everyone is different. Being able to perform and being able to do the recordings. I mean, these are songs that everyone in the jazz world have done. You know, it's like a recycle. We're all doing the same songs. But what makes A and different from B is your uniqueness to it, the way you interpret the songs, and all of that comes from, I want to say, for me, my persona, my background, my appreciation for the art called jazz. The way I express emotion and all that. It all shows in my work. So that's one thing that I really take on that.
Beautiful. So tell me very simply, why do you love jazz?
I love jazz because jazz is life. Jazz is life. Jazz talks about the stories of life, the emotions that comes with life, the good, the bad, the not so good. When you listen to it, you listen and you think. Or for me, I don't know about other people. When I sit down and listen, I listen to think and reflect and see how this affects my life or has affected my life somewhere down in my journey in life. So that's the reason why I like it. And the fact that it's timeless. It is timeless. Jazz is timeless. So that's why I like it.
Absolutely it is. So tell me, how are you coping with the COVID-19 pandemic now? What have you been doing and how has your life changed?
Just staying home and studying new songs. I'm not doing anything. I stay home, I read quite a bit. And, I study songs that I've not really taken time to study in terms of how I will interpret it when I perform it. And of course I follow the news and I talk to my family every now and then as they check on me and that's it. Go to the grocery. They say we should stay indoors. So I'm trying to respect the law here. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, it's this is something I don't think anybody on the planet's ever experienced. It's very extraordinary. And I guess my question to you is this, is that, we don't know exactly when it's going to happen, but, we do know at some point we're going to get back to reality in our lives and the live music's going to happen again. So my question to you is this. When that happens, when the musician goes back on the stage, the singers and the audience gets back into the clubs and the auditoriums and coliseums, what do you hope we've realized from this that will make us better or wiser or stronger when we come back together?
I do have some few musician friends here, and what I'm hearing from them is, first of all, I feel a lot of people in the arts are suffering right now. And the main point is, money. They don't have money. My friends are telling me, like you said, we all never thought this was coming forth. We heard it at the beginning of the year, but we didn't think it was going to have a life of its own as it has, and taking over everyone else's life. People are talking about the fact that they don't have money. There's nothing. And what I've come to realize, a lot of musicians, we are paid as we go. You do a gig, you get paid, and you pay the band members or whatever the story might be, and you move on, thinking, okay, next week we get the next band, or next month we get the next performance or whatnot. And I want to say a lot of them I don't think do save, because there's not even enough to save in the first place. And so, keeping people at home as we are all staying in, and you don't have money, it can be very frustrating. I'm pretty sure a lot of them are going through maybe some level of mental anxiety about all of this, and anger and, hurt and pain and all that. But I was just telling a friend yesterday that I know musicians, we started to, to do music. But maybe in the future we should all think of a plan B. I don't know. I mean, this is just Douyé talking, and have a side craft just in case, I don't know. And we just laughed about it because where do you have the time? Being a musician in today's age is very challenging. It's very demanding because almost everyone is a musician. And so what makes you stand out? You got to put in the work again and again and again and again. So where do you have time to have a second craft out there, making money? I guess we just have to try our hardest to save as much as we can. Because we just don't know when storms like this, will come again and pull everyone, down. And of course, have supportive friends and family members. A lot of people are going through depression right now. I don't know. I mean, what do you think, John? Tell me.
I think all of that. I think every single aspect of this is correct, and it's valid, and it's heartbreaking, and the only thing I think we can do to keep ourselves at a point where we stay strong and we find ways to survive is to be hopeful. And, the one thing I'm trying to do, when this started here in Kansas City, I think nationwide around March 13th, I don't know that we had any idea that there was going to be this timeline of BC before coronavirus where we were going to be like, wow, that was the way life was before. We're so firmly entrenched in this new world that we're living in. I think the only thing that we can do is hope, but it's hard because it's so hard out there. But I did watch 60 Minutes last night with Mr. Wynton Marsalis, and the interviewer had asked him, what would your dad say? Because he lost his father Ellis to COVID-19. And he said that Ellis would have looked at him and said, what are you going to do? This isn't about what you're going to say you're going to do, but what are you going to do? And he's sitting in Jazz at Lincoln Center, one of the most bustling places on the planet. It's empty, and it's empty into the foreseeable future where no one knows when anything's going to start up. And all he can say is, I just have to keep going. And that's all we can do. And for me, when this started, I didn't know if I was going to keep doing interviews, but the one thing I feel like is going to be the best thing for everybody's psyche is for us to be able to get out here and talk about the music and talk about getting back to it, because that's hope. That's the mental standpoint that we can all say, this is what we need to do. We know what the reality is, but we also know that for most of our lives, we haven't lived this quarantine. This is the first time for all of us. No one's going to be able to say, well, I remember when I went through a quarantine back way when. No one's gone through this. Not even someone that's in their 90s has gone through this. This is a very unique time and period in our lives, and we have to be hopeful. We have to grab onto something. And I think for us in jazz, that was the other thing that they asked Wynton. They said, this is the essence of jazz. It's improv. You're thrown into something, and you got to make it right. You got to make it sound good. That's what we have to do. And if there's anything that I've learned since I've been doing jazz since 2011 is that, and I know I'm biased, but I genuinely believe this. I think I've seen, experienced, and talked to enough people in this reality to know that some of the finest humans that I've ever had the chance to talk to or be around are jazz musicians, hands down. I love this community. I love you all. There's such an intelligence. There's such a humble nature. There's such a high regard for art. You're a very unique species of human, and I believe that what's happening in jazz is very mimicable with what's happening in our lives now. We are thrown into extraordinary situations, and nothing will sound like this period in history. And that's exactly what jazz does all the time. And that's what I want to honor, and that's what I'm trying to really get to the heart of during this time. I want the musician's story, but I also want your voice during a very unique time that may never come around again. And hopefully, God willing, we may never have to experience this again.
I know. It's really tough. But you said something that was very extraordinary, and that's being hopeful. and, being optimistic, because a lot of people are down right now. It takes strength, to be optimistic in a situation where you don't know if you have a meal tomorrow. And so, having hope and believing that we shall overcome this eventually, it's a very beautiful way of looking at it. And of course, like you said, improvising, it's exactly what it is. You go on stage sometimes after practicing, and the spirit of the stage takes you on a different route. You start singing the songs differently and improvising it as it comes. And it is what it is. Life is all about improvising. You gotta take it as it is and make the best of it, What can I say?
That's all you can say. That's really all you can say. But, one way or another, I think, too, that I've learned, there's been different phases and stages of this because I've been doing a lot of interviews with musicians where, I think the overriding sentiment is this. Art is going to save everybody during this time, whether it's visual, performing, TV, film, jazz, pop, rock, R&B. All of these art forms are going to save everybody, and I think that's what we have to realize in this. Medicine's going to have their place, grocery store workers, sanitary workers, information technology, all of these things will have their place. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think there's two sectors of this. There's survival and there's mental health. And the mental health, and probably survival to a good degree, is the fact that there's a level of escapism and there's a level of just genuinely feeling good, and the art's going to do that for us. And my hope is that when we get to go back, that we realize that. I'll give you a quick story, a hopeful story here. I got married in July, and... Oh,
congratulations.
Thank you, and I'm glad it was last July, not this July. So... And my wife, Amanda, I've been taking her to a lot of jazz shows. She's always liked jazz. And since we've been together, we've gone to a lot of shows. And I took her to a very unique show on March 4 here in Kansas City. It was Bill Frisell, and it was his new trio. And we went to the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art, and she loved it. It was her favorite show. But this is the thing. At the very end of the show, they got into, this is before coronavirus really kicked in and anybody knew what was going on, before quarantine. She started singing, the singer had a beautiful voice, started singing We Shall Overcome, and the crowd spontaneously rose and everybody in unison started singing it. And I think about how prophetic and how maybe there was something in the air that we knew. Maybe there was some subconscious cerebral realm that we didn't know we were dealing with at the time. And everybody started kind of getting into that song, and I think about that. That was the last jazz that I saw live, and I think, wow, what an amazing time. And I ran into a bass player from Kansas City that was getting ready to go to Paris for 2 weeks, and a weekend he had to scramble to come home. It's just been amazing how many different stories of people that we're just living our lives, and all of a sudden everything comes to a grinding halt.
You got it. On the 13th March, I was in the plane. We were just getting ready to take off. I was in the plane going to Philadelphia to perform at Philadelphia Art Museum. And they called me whilst I was in the plane saying, I think you couldn't come, Douyé. We have to reschedule. Come out of the plane. It was very surreal. So I got out of the plane. And I was thinking about it. Is this real? And they said, yeah, we're going to have to come out of the plane. So I came out of the plane, and that was my last time I was going to perform before all of this. That was the 13th of March. So, yeah, it's really mad. It's a mad time, and I hope all musicians out there and everyone out in the arts and just everyone should be hopeful and believe that, it will eventually come to an end, all of it. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you one final question, and it's this. Everyone has a perception of you, your family, your friends, your fans, that you're living your life. Who do you think you are?
I think I'm a very strong person. I think I'm very strong mentally, maybe not physically, but I just consider myself a very beautiful person all around. You know, in my life, I've gone through ups and downs, I would think, like anyone that is living. But I always find a way to wave off the bad and hold on to the good. I always find a way to see that there is something to learn, you know, from the good, from the bad, from all of it. And use that in my life, you know, and I think that's beautiful. You know,
I agree.
And I just allow things to weigh my spirit down in a way whereby it comes off in my persona. Because some people in life, they go through issues, you know, I mean, there are things they can't control. And it reflects in your life in a very bad way. You know, they can maybe become a very angry person, you know, for no reason. And that is something I don't like at all. And so I try to, you know, psychologically look at everything as a way to learn from it, to gain wisdom, and make my life better out of that, you know. So.
Absolutely. That's a great way. That's a great answer. It's a great way to wrap everything up. Hey, thank you again for reaching out.
All right. Thank you, Joe.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest singers in Nigeria, Los Angeles, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Douyé for her time, music, and reaching out to Neon Jazz. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Search for Neon Jazz on YouTube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.